Underglazes, slips, and envelopes are different terms used for clay in liquid form with a stain added to make it a specific color. They can be applied to greenware or bisqueware. Do not put them on top of glaze. Remember, underglaze goes under the glaze. Glazes are a combination of materials that will melt in the kiln to create a smooth, glossy, or matte surface on your ceramics. To get colors and certain effects, pigments and metal oxides are added. And then washes are concentrated amounts of metal oxides mixed with water for fluidity. Stir the container each time you dip your brush. Wash your hands after using them. Every time you use underglazes, glazes, or washes, you should clean your containers, tools, and brushes in the rinse bucket. No cleaning these things in the sink. Use glazed rinse buckets to keep metals, fruits, and colorants out of the watershed. Glaze that goes down the drain is harmful to the environment and it is wasteful. Once you have cleaned things in the rinse bucket, you may do a final rinse in the sink. From the materials that settle in the rinse bucket, we're able to make amazing mystery glazes. Large buckets are glazes that are safest to use as a liner on all major parts of your work. To open the large glaze buckets, push the wall of the bucket right under the lid as you pull the lid off. Small 2-gallon containers hold the glazes that are higher in metals and are more expensive to produce. These glazes should only be used as highlights, embellishments, or details, less than 1/3 of the piece. Each bucket has a spoon or ladle that lives in the bucket. Please keep the spoon with the bucket and do not mix up the spoons or add a second spoon to a bucket. Be sure to stir the glazes really well mixed before each dip or pour. Materials that set at the bottom should be dispersed into the entire batch. If materials are really stuck to the bottom of a bucket, a tech can help you mix the glaze with an electric mixer to get a good blend. If you are dipping a piece into more than one bucket, be sure that the first dip is completely dry before doing the second dip. Second dips can make a glaze application thicker, which can lead to drips. Leave plenty of extra space at the bottom of the pot if you are doing more than one dip. If you need to put a little bit of glaze into a small container to do detail work or for the spray roof, label the container with the glaze name before you pour the glaze into it. Be sure you check twice before dumping it back into the bucket. If you need some glaze, thin down glaze, for example, to pass it through the spray gun easier, label a small cup, fill it halfway with glaze from the bucket, and then add water to the small cup. Do not water down the entire bucket. The glaze techs will be controlling the amount of water in each glaze and measuring it regularly. Glazes should be the consistency of heavy cream. If it is closer to the thickness of a milkshake or the glaze seems too thick, do not add water to it. Ask a glaze tech or a studio coordinator to test it. When glazing, it is essential to have no glaze on the parts of your work that will touch the kiln shelves. You can wax the foot or base of your work before you glaze, or just avoid the foot or base while glazing and clean the glaze off with a sponge if it gets to the foot or base. The bottom 1/4 inch of your work should have no glaze on it. Work will not be fired if there is a glaze on the foot or too close to the foot. Dry glaze on bisqueware should typically be about the thickness of your fingernail. If your glaze is thicker than this, especially towards the bottom of your work, you risk the glaze dipping to the bottom of your work and onto the kiln shelf. Double check and clean the bottom of your work before putting it on the glaze rack. Do not mix the glazes together. This creates material waste and contamination, which we need to avoid. If you realize that you've made a mistake and you might have contaminated the glaze bucket, even the slightest inkling, immediately tape the lid down on the bucket and tell an instructor, tech, or studio coordinator. Decide if you want your work fired in oxidation or reduction. 2 racks are labeled for each type of firing. So it's oxidation, and then this one is reduction. Electric brown and speckled B-mix cannot go onto the outdoor reduction kiln. This clay will bubble up, float, and melt in the reduction kiln. They can only be fired indoors in oxidation. Reject cart. Works that does not have an underglaze mark on the bottom, has excessively thick glaze on the foot, or glaze too close to the base will not be fired. It can be found on the reject cart.